our next, it's not a speaker, it's two folks. And they're going to speak about pioneering voice and beyond. Two fantastic experts in this space, and hopefully I can learn something about my voice. But I think it's going to be a different subject. Craig Walker brings 15 years of experience as an entrepreneur, venture capitalist, corporate exec, and attorney. He was an EIR at Google Ventures and previously co-founder of VoIP company Grand Central Communications, which was acquired by Google in July of 2007. And Gary Pudles founded AnswerNet in 1998 and has driven the growth of organizations through sales, acquisitions, and partnerships. He also won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Let's hear it for Craig and Gary. Come on up.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, and I really appreciate you guys coming. This is supposed to be the inspiration stage, so we're going to talk a little bit about inspiration, and hopefully at the end, you'll be as inspired by Craig as I am. So for those of you who don't know, I want to expand a little bit on Craig's bio. Craig sold two companies. One company he sold called Dialpad became Yahoo Talk.
Yahoo Voice.
Yahoo Voice?
Yep.
They both use voice. I didn't know that. And Grand Central became Google Voice. So what I want to do is, since a lot of entrepreneurs ultimately want to sell to some, a lot of your exit strategies are going to be, oh, and we're going to sell to the biggest, baddest in the block. I want to take you back to those days. Your Dialpad was a big VoIP company, as I recall?
Yeah, PC to phone, kind of a precursor to Skype.
And as I recall, you took that out of bankruptcy, right?
Took it through a bankruptcy. It had raised, they raised 65 million in an A and a B, and they spent about 80. And then I came in, took it through Chapter 11, and rebuilt it.
So you rebuild the company. You're now operating. How do you begin a conversation with Yahoo, who at that time? So tell me first about what was Yahoo doing at the time in the space, and how did you begin talking to Yahoo?
Yeah, so it was it was a long period. I started in 2001, took it through Chapter 11, and then basically rebuilt it from the basic ground up. We took it at my first day of work, we had 150 employees. By my 10th day, we had 15. And so we put it all back together piece by piece. And then I ran it for 4 years. Basically, we became profitable, and at that time, Skype was really beating Yahoo Messenger throughout Europe, and They needed a voice answer. So we didn't approach them; they approached us. We had rebuilt the team to about 55 people. We're profitable and had over $1 million in the bank, so they came to us.
So Yahoo knocks on the door, and you get the call.
Yeah.
And you put the phone down, and what's the first thing you do? You put the phone down after talking to Yahoo. What do you say? What do you do? And who did you call?
Well, I mean, it starts off about a 2 to 3 month period of just of painful anguish of trying to get a deal closed. But first phone call I think was to our lawyers to say, okay, this looks like this may be happening. We've got to get all our ducks in a row and make sure we have everything ready. But the first call is really a very early feeling out type of it was mostly I think the point of the first call was to find out what range we'd be interested in selling at. Right. And she was throwing out numbers and kind of like, yeah, no, I don't know if that's going to work. And then from then it kind of became more formal, but it was just kind of a feel out session that first time.
So the whole process takes a couple months, and you know what your strengths are, you know what your weaknesses are. Is there something in the back of your mind you're sitting there saying, I really hope they don't ask this, or I really hope they don't find out about this, that you were worried about?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, this was 2005, there were a lot of regulatory challenges going on, and there were not challenges, but just kind of like a lot of open questions in the VoIP space, and they clearly didn't understand it very well, and we were worried that they'd get spooked by that. The reality was that they were going to have to get in the business anyway, or Skype was just going to run away with everything. So that really didn't worry me too much. The other thing that worried me a little bit was just there are a lot of other VoIP competitors out there that you realize that, hey, they're going to do something, and if it's not with you, it'll be with one of your competitors, and then you're going to be really screwed. So once you're kind of like have that inside track, you definitely didn't want to lose it.
All right, so you sell to Yahoo. We'll talk about then you went to work for Yahoo. We'll come back to that. So sure. Now let's go. Now let's go to Grand Central. Again, you have Grand Central. you're building that company. How long were you running that company before you got well, I guess before you had the fateful meeting, and it was in Boston?
Yeah, we started the company at the beginning of 2006, and were acquired in July of 2007, so about 18 months.
So what happened? As I understand it, you had a pretty important meeting in the process of building that company.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that you never know, what's going to be an important meeting before you get into it. We were at this conference, a trade show called Vaughn, Voice on the Net, that Jeff Pulver used to put on. And we were at their Boston one in, I think, October of 2006. So before we even launched. And we were going to meet with the Google guys. And, I had very low expectations for the meeting. It was hard to get the meeting. They were very busy. And so we ended up getting some meeting. We met in a closed cafe way around the back of the Heinz Convention Center. And there was one guy, so it was about 5 people from Google, product managers, biz dev people, and there was one guy who was like rolling on the ground with food poisoning. And so, he didn't say a word during the whole thing, and I paid attention to the other people who were like driving the meeting and giving him a demo and being responsive. And little did I know that he was the guy. It turned out to be Wesley Chan, who's now one of the partners at Google Ventures. But he was the guy who really wanted the meeting and was really interested in and been working with Google Talk and wanted to get these features into Talk. So, the meeting ended. I had nothing, whatever. You have tons of meetings all the time. You have no idea what's happening. But apparently he was impressed from his position on the floor, and he started really looking into us. Never let us know, but he was kind of like stalking us for a couple months. And then I ran into him at CES, which I thought was kind of a chance encounter, but it wasn't. He was came
there
to see us there. And then a couple months later, like February or March, got a call from business development or corp dev at Google that wanted to talk about, maybe working very closely together, which was kind of code word for maybe get acquired.
Yeah, either be dinner or be the diner. Yeah. And at this point, you're being dinner. So you went through this process twice. You came to valuation. And the next piece is you wind up going to work for both of these, let's be honest, premier companies, right? Most people who get involved in the tech world would give their eye teeth to work at Google. They'd give their eye teeth to work at Yahoo until they actually work there. It's like going out with the cheerleader, right? You'd always like to go out with the cheerleader until you're actually going out with her, but that's a whole nother story. The idea, though, is all these people would love to work at those kinds of places, and you're working there. Now, that's cool, except for the fact that you haven't had to answer to anybody other than funders. So tell me what that's like.
Yeah, it's a very, very weird transition, because you go from making decisions, I wouldn't say on the fly, but making decisions very quickly throughout the day, to a very drawn-out decision-making process that brings in other parties. And you want to do something, we got to get the marketing guys involved. Or you want to launch something, get the branding guys involved. Or if you want to price something, get the pricing team involved and have them sign off on it, and then sell it to the managers upstairs. And so you truly go from being able to turn on a dime and come up with something in your sleep and put it in the next day, to not being able to do that at all. So it was very constricting. I'd say Yahoo was certainly way more constricting than Google was. Google was still, at the time, very kind of like hair on fire, kind of an entrepreneurial place inside. But Yahoo was very structured and very, very, very slow. So I ended up only staying there for about 3 months.
Oh, so you only were there at Yahoo for 3 months. So then you finish what you were doing, then you start Grand Central again. Now, did you ever have any problems with Yahoo over Grand Central? Was there?
No, not at all. They got what they wanted out of Dialpad. They were able to plug in and have Yahoo Voice, kind of immediately, and we had great kind of footprint of users throughout the world. So it was, it was kind of what they wanted. And they had a big messenger team, and this was a big part. So it wasn't like we were going to be this new giant group within Yahoo that we were going to lead or build. We were going to be part of the messenger team. At Google, on the other hand, there was no kind of like telephony group. There was Google Talk, but it was kind of a small team and doing IM, but not changing the world with it. So Google Voice got to be its own product, and we got to, do our own team and do our own product and do our own launches and do our own, PR and marketing and stuff. So that was much more enjoyable and
Right.
more entrepreneurial. But still, I stayed there for 3 years, and that was, I had agreed in the deal to stay for 2. So that tells you that it wasn't terrible.
Well, what's interesting to me is that transition, right? I don't know about your experience. I know about mine is in an entrepreneurial startup, when they're smaller, as you're growing, the employee engagement level is enormous, right? You know that your head of IT, you know that even the second or third level project manager, they're really into everything that's going on. Everybody's talking. Now all of a sudden you're moving into a company that people are in job protection mode. Any big company is going to be fraught with lack of engagement. They do the studies. So how do you as an entrepreneur start having to deal with, you talked about having to deal with a much larger decision-making process, and you're dealing with employees who don't give a shit. Excuse me.
The nice thing is our entire team got brought over, so the core of the Google Voice team was my Grand Central team. So they were guys that I had kind of worked with in the lean days and, scrappy startup times with. So they actually cared, and everyone had a lot of pride in the product. The people we worked with who were kind of lifers at Google, they were good. They're just, there's just, the problem is there's just too many masters at that point. It's
Right.
you want to make Google Voice the greatest thing in the world, and there's 200 million users of Gmail, and we're like, okay, how do we put this into Gmail? And Gmail's like, whoa. We got 200 million users. We don't rock the boat on a lot of things. So it's, it's just, I wouldn't say it's turf or protecting territory. It's just more of, people have different priorities than what you have when you're just blindly following your own mission.
So how do you share your vision in that kind of environment? And I know, look, you left after 3 years, so ultimately you can only go so far with it. But how do you share your vision in that kind of environment? And at what point do you sit back and you say, okay, I can only take this so far in this environment. It's time for me to move back on.
Yeah, the good thing is if you have good kind of product leaders, and I'd say, Larry, Sergey, and Bradley, those were good product guys.
Right.
And they understood the value of it, and they gave us a lot of rope to go build it. So that helped. But, frankly, the reason I stayed 3 years is my last thing I wanted to do is get Google Voice calling integrated into Gmail, which we did. And that was kind of where I realized, okay, here's now kind of a clean break point.
Right.
To do other more disruptive stuff was going to take a long, long time. So decided to leave and do it elsewhere.
Now, wasn't that around the time, was it the last year of your 3 years that you were considered the entrepreneur in residence at Google Ventures, or quite frankly, was that just sort of a nice title to transition you to new pastures?
That was a real thing.
Did they really just throw you out and give you a new title and say, okay, boy?
No, I wish. No, it was, I went to 3 years of working on the Google Voice thing, then Google Ventures was becoming a real big fund. At the time it was $100 million a year, and now I think it's double that. But yeah, so I went over there and had some ideas that I wanted to pursue in the voice space and the restaurant space, and really didn't have a clear idea of exactly what it was. So spent 6 months there kind of working on what it would be, and we ended up not being able to decide, so we came up with a labs concept and created an incubator.
So now you're back into the startup world. So, and this is what we're all doing here. So I talked in a different session, and maybe you can tell me, do you feel that entrepreneurship is learned, or is it something that people have built internally? That they're internally wired to be entrepreneurs, and they're going to be that anyway?
Yeah, I think it's more internally wired. I think when you go to conferences like this and you go to other places and you see guys who, have left good, stable, high-paying jobs to go try to change the world or come up with something interesting or new. that's kind of hardwired. I mean, that's takes some balls, and it just takes like a kind of like a willingness to accept a lot of risk, and to know you're going to get paid less and work harder and want to do that.
Isn't that what all of us want to do?
It's a crazy thing, but and I seen like I have a guy I used to work for at this venture fund who teaches entrepreneurship at some business schools, and it's every time I go and sit in on classes or something, it always kind of throws me out how like they try to here's how to be an entrepreneur and how to teach it, and it's all these things are kind of like you have no idea what's going to happen the next day, let alone next month or next year. So it's one of those things that it does seem kind of like hardwired. My man Jamie up here in the front row is a real entrepreneur.
Scary entrepreneur, absolutely. So let's talk about that though. You've got certain people who are hardwired, and one of the big challenges is making that transition from entrepreneur, startup, to actually running a business. And I know Jamie and I have talked about it, and I've talked about it with a lot of people here, which is, are there different skill sets, and do you believe you possess those skill sets to actually run a business? And I'll go back real quick to a question I asked back in the green room, which is, when you started Dialpad, you bought Dialpad out of bankruptcy, or just about into bankruptcy, did you plan on being an entrepreneur of buying, building, and flipping, or were you going to run a company? And what do you think about the difference in skill sets, et cetera?
Well, I think, and I've been asked a couple other times or been on some other panels about, how do you get acquired and what does it take? And, frankly, what it took in our case was we weren't trying to get acquired in either case. Like we were trying to build a business and stay alive and raise more money and add more products and make customers happier and, provide great support and great value for whatever we did charge for. And I think if you do that as your goal, you have a chance of being acquired. If you go into it with hoping to be acquired, you don't have a chance of being acquired.
So basically,
you better focus on building the killer business, and then you have a chance.
So if you act cool, the girls will come at you, and if you're acting needy, then you got to beg the girl. Is that how this works?
That's not a bad analogy.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask him about e-com entrepreneur groupies, but I know his wife is here, so we'll bail on that subject today. Seriously, you've now met a lot of entrepreneurs through your work at Google, through your work at FireSpotter, which is your current activity. Tell me about the scariest meeting that you've ever had with an entrepreneur. Not scariest, but meeting where you walked out of the meeting wondering what the heck just happened.
That used to happen to me a lot. Back when I was a venture capitalist, I'd have meetings with guys, and literally they fell into two camps. And I was telling you this backstage, it would be like half the time you'd meet these guys and you'd be like, I feel completely sorry that this guy's left his great job at Anderson or what have you to go do this. There's no way in the world that'll work. And then the other half would be so far over my head or esoteric that you'd be like, sit there for an hour trying to keep the eyes open and try to take in exactly what they're saying. But at the end of the day, I'd be like, I have no idea what just happened in there. And then occasionally you'd find some that totally hit for you that are great. And so I think that happens quite a bit. It's funny, and even the crazy ideas sometimes turn out to be great. And
what was the craziest idea that you heard that ultimately turned out to be great?
I can't even remember. I mean, there's so many of them, but I don't know. It was a crazy time. This was back in '99, free grocery delivery on a 30-minute window, selling it less than I could get it at Safeway. That was a crazy idea. It worked for a while. It was like a $4 billion company at one point, and then it went away. So I thought it was crazy, then I thought I was stupid, then I thought I was smart again when it failed. So I don't know. It's hard to tell. But even if nothing good comes of a first startup or a first effort, you do learn lessons along the way. You meet a bunch of other people. You certainly meet investors and stuff, and you kind of learn the process. So maybe it'll be better the next time.
So I guess being on both sides of it, were Dialpad and Grand Central venture funded?
Yeah, they both were.
They both were. So what was your worst experience with a venture capitalist? What can this group here take in terms of warning on things they should look for. It's pretty tough when you're already a beggar, right? You're in there begging for money to a VC. So what kind of warning shots can you give, having been on both sides of that negotiation?
Yeah, I don't know. Still to this day, probably the most painful thing as a CEO is raising money, even when you have a lot of good things in your favor. It's still a pain, and it's still. I hate having to ask people for stuff, and I certainly hate having to ask people for money. And when you ask people for money, you basically are saying, now you have the right to ask absolutely anything in the world of me, and I have to answer with a smile on my face because I'm the one who started this conversation and asked you for money. So it's a huge distraction from your work. Your team's back in the office building the product, and you're out, meeting people all over the city and the valley, and it's tough. I think it's hard to say what's the worst of it. The worst of it is just actually the time sink and how long it takes to get a deal done. No matter how good it looks like it is, it always takes a long time.
But then you have the good side of it. The time suck is a huge waste, but then you have the good side, because I know that you've made a lot of really good friends, Wes being one of them,
Sure.
in your career meeting with these kind of people. So how important are those people that you meet during the process?
Wes is a special case. Wesley Chan, the partner at Google Ventures, because we worked together after we got acquired. He basically did our acquisition. We worked together for 5 years and got to know each other really well. So when he became a venture capitalist, it wasn't like meeting a venture capitalist. It was like, working with a guy you've worked with for a long time. It's interesting. Every VC will give you the pitch on why they're worth more than just the dollars they're putting in, and why they're going to add value. And I certainly believe it on a lot of those, and then other ones I don't. And it's just kind of a weird feeling. But I think at the end of the day, you're going to be successful based on what you do, not what anyone else is going to do for you. And this goes back to being a venture capitalist. I remember guys coming in giving pitches, and they're like, all right, and then I'm going to partner with Comcast, and they're going to go sell this for me, or I got this great deal through Intuit, and we're going to be in front of 10 million businesses. It's like, if the success is riding on someone else doing something, it isn't going to happen.
Well, I want to thank, we've run out of time. I really want to thank Craig Walker. I want to thank all of you for coming in, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.